Joining me on the show today is Dr. Deepak Raheja, a psychiatrist. Also with us is Yogita Bhayana, a women's rights activist and founder of Pari. Dr. Deepak Raheja, let me come to you. You know, we're trying to understand the mind of a brutal, barbaric killer as this man whose story has been making headlines for days together in India. Whether you talk about the Shraddha Valkar case that happened here in the national capital, the case of Sakshi and Sahil in the recent past, where the woman was stabbed multiple times and then bludgeoned to death by this man in full public view, or the case of this Mumbai man who allegedly kills his live-in partner, then chops her body into multiple pieces, cooks it in a pressure cooker, boils those body parts and feeds them to stray dogs. I mean, to even say that this is absolutely mind-boggling would be a gross understatement. This is straight out of Hollywood movies that we've seen based on psychopaths. You know, one is almost reminded of movies like Silence of the Lambs and, Hannibal, though those were about cannibalism. The point that I'm trying to make here is, this is not the first time we've heard of a murder, and this is certainly not the first time that we've heard of a man killing a woman he was in a relationship with. What is mind-boggling is the barbarism, the extreme cruelty that we've seen in these cases. So please explain to us, you're a psychiatrist, what, according to you, goes on in the mind of a man who first kills his partner and then treats the body in this manner?
Is obviously a man who's hugely debauched. He is sick in his head. Of course, this is a crime of, I don't even know if it's fair to call it a crime of passion, because the passion was consummated, culminated, and they were living in together. So
For
he
many
had the
years,
woman
for many
with
years,
her
yes.
for
Yes.
many years. So for him to go to the extent of not just the murder, but the barbaric manner in which he butchered the body, in which he tried to boil and dispose the body, is depictive of a mind that is extremely traumatic. See, he's inflicting trauma, but there is a huge amount of dysfunction, psychopathic thinking, antisocial personality traits, and symptoms that gets him to process the guilt and living with the corpse of a woman that he loved over the 3-day period, trying his level best to butcher it in a manner and to dispose it off, is a very sick mind. And to my understanding, I don't think this originates impromptu. I don't think this is an impulsive act. When we do always a retrospective autopsy of the situation, and not the person, and of course the person, but also the situation, we find that they were not just telltale signs, but gross cues that had been present in the relationship or even much earlier. And it's just that we choose to shut our eyes. I mean, the women, unfortunately, as we see, these incidences are more reported when there is a live-in situation which does not have social conformity. The woman feels like she's cut off. She's The support system is either cut off because the woman is judged, or it also suits such a perpetrator to cut all ties and let the person, the victim, live in a very, very toxic environment, which is equivalent to a encapsulated environment that he creates, which is equivalent to what we see in Stockholm syndrome. That beyond a point, then the victim starts identifying with the cause of the perpetrator. And these people classically have a Jekyll and Hyde personality. They are extremely abusive. And on another occasion, a few hours later, they'll be the extreme charmers and extremely charming, doing their level best to make their beloved feel extraordinary. And lo and behold, here is the victim, the partner, the beloved, who's totally confused, baffled in terms of what she needed to do. So the take home, the bottom line is that the communication line, the support system needs to be maintained. I think in all these cases, whether it was Shraddha Walker or it's this case or any other case, what really happens is that such a victim, I mean, such a perpetrator, classically in a manner cuts off the support system, and in the wake of no communication, no support system, living with a toxic man, a toxic relationship, when the line gets crossed, we don't even see that the line is crossed. From safety to intimidation to gross violence, which usually to begin with is no, it's verbal and it's emotionally abusive, getting to a point where this is the result, and we have to deal with the
It
loss
takes the
of
shape
life.
of such gruesome violence. You've explained some fascinating concepts to us, Doctor. Before I go across to Yogita, I need to delve a little further into some of these points that you've made. There is no doubt that support systems were missing for these women. I think you've very rightly pointed that out, whether we take the case of Shraddha Walkar or this woman in Mumbai who unfortunately was an orphan. There is no doubt that these women were in relationships with extremely toxic men. Uh, there is no doubt in my mind that the behavior these perpetrators have exhibited clearly tells us that they're psychopaths. You use two very interesting terms, that often these women end up getting trapped in these relationships as a result of what is known as the Stockholm syndrome, despite the fact that they have faced abuse in the past, maybe verbal, maybe physical, maybe mental and emotional, but they continue for whatever reasons to stay on with these men. And then, apart from the whole Stockholm syndrome business, used a very interesting term, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. A lot of these men live dual lives, have extremely duplicitous dual personalities, and therefore I want to ask you, Doctor, when there is somebody with such sociopathic and violent tendencies living in our midst, how is it that the rest of us don't even get whiff of it? The fact that, I mean, they may not necessarily be the most communicative or sociable people, but they are still living in the midst of our society. They are living amongst us, right? So how is it that, they carry on with these lives, with these secret dark lives behind closed doors, and we don't even get whiff of it? What does that say about, I don't know, us as a society, or is it really about how cleverly these individuals are able to hide that dark side of theirs?
So I think you very, very beautifully put. It is both the points. A, these individuals are very, very clever. They maintain a persona behind which the layers of darkness and toxicity is not visible to the world. They know where to let their guards down and let the demon come out, and for them to be able to exercise the control which is classical of them to really surmount in a relationship. And also, very sadly, to some extent, it is also depictive of the new face of the society where we live in, where we tend to draw lines to say that if it
Where
is
no one
not
seems to
directly
care.
bothering me, I will
Yes.
not put my hand into somebody's life. And in the wake of this autonomy that and which towards which the society is moving, we tend to shut our eyes to say, why should I be involved? I mean, the recent murder that we saw, we see that on a busy street, there are people moving around when this
There were
man,
bystanders who
took
just looked
a
on
stone and
and then
bludgeoned,
walked past
and
as if
everybody
nothing
was
had
moving
happened, and this
around
woman
it
was being
just like it
bludgeoned to
was
death.
normal business. We used to hear such gory crimes in dark streets of some of the dangerous western cities where even police dreaded to go. But to hear such things happen in the new urban India, is a worrying sign. It is a sign that we need to be very off, and we need to be perceptive and not just wash our hands off and put a wall to say that if it does not involve me, I would not want to be involved, because tomorrow it could be anyone. It could be somebody related to me. So we are not far if we let society progress in that manner, where we don't even care who's living next door. We don't even care if there are sounds of domestic violence. We don't even care what's happening around, and if the man or the woman is being perpetrated or exposed to any kind of abuse. So I think as a society, these are signs that we need to wake up, we need to be perceptive, and we need to not be callous and indifferent and sucked up in the world, the real, the imaginary virtual world, where it's me and my screen and my phone
And
and
it's
my
so
pad and my
ironical, Doctor,
computer.
isn't
I
it?
don't really
And I'd
care
love
what's
to discuss this with you in greater detail in the next segment. You know, it is so ironical that we live in this virtual world where we seem to be connected with the outside world all the time. Dr. Raheja, please go ahead.
So essentially, I couldn't agree more that I think the issues of domestic violence and the challenges that the woman goes today in today's world are very real. But at the same time, I think it would be unfair to not see such a case as rarest of rare. So I don't
Absolutely.
even think
I
it
think the
is
full
fair
force
for
of the
us to be
law
propagating that
needs to be
paranoia,
applied
that
here.
we want
Yes.
to we want to see all relationships with that lens and that mirror. But the police officer was so rightly saying that if you feel that you are stuck up in a relationship like that, then I think it is our responsibility to not be blinded. I mean, what really happens is that we get blinded by the charm, in a manner that we fail to recognize that there is humongous support available everywhere. I think we just need to reach out, and then it is our
But
adult
let's face it,
responsibility.
doctor. Let's face it, Dr. Raheja. You know, you say that there is plenty of support available. Yes, we can talk about helplines. We can talk about, activists like Yogita, who I know personally has helped a lot of women in distress. But, fact of the matter is, we can talk about these agencies that work with women, etc., etc. But at a societal level, there is a problem. We discussed this in the earlier segment. At a societal problem, we are dealing with a huge issue, sir, of deep rooted apathy, callousness, an attitude that I don't care what's happening in my neighbor's house as long as it does not affect my life. That is a problem, and that is the reason why not just these women who've been victims of such horrific and unspeakable crimes, but a lot of people in general are facing growing isolation. You know, you're a psychiatrist, so I'm sure, sir, you've come across multiple cases of how there are cases of depression growing in our society on multiple counts. But one of the biggest factors, correct me if I'm wrong, is loneliness. The fact that people do not have enough friends they can reach out to, the fact that they are lost and isolated in their own little worlds, even if they are digitally connected. In real life, they're actually very alone and isolated. Would you agree,
Yeah,
doctor?
I totally agree that the apathy of the society is visible. Someone may have 4,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 followers or friends on Facebook, but when it comes to real life, do we have those meaningful relationships? So what's really happening is that the difference between the real and the real world is blurring, and we fail to be perceptive that when in dire strait, our skills will not get honed up and they will not be polished to create a support system for ourselves unless we are reaching out and interacting with the real world. But when I was pointing towards these, was talking about the support, what I really meant was that this last 1 hour, this 50 minutes of the show that we've been doing, the sensitivity is so perceptive, the energy is so perceptive, and that to me also is a reflection of the empathy that the society responsible journalists like you are willing to accord as a give back to society. So I'm saying, even if it means, and I think that is what the gentleman, the police officer, was also pointing, that even if it means taking a radical decision, reaching out to a news channel, to, and I've seen that sensitivity emerge in the police also. I mean, though gone are the days of those imaginary myths where we said that police was not sensitive. Today, the police regularly mobilizes sensitizing training for their officers, and they are becoming a lot more sensitive to the problem of women and children. So I think the onus lies upon us is to popularize this, to reach out, and like you said, the society needs to be more aware, more sensitive, more empathetic, and
Yes.
and more not willing to, in the name of drawing that line, to say it is a democratic, or
Or it's not my
line,
problem. Yes.
it is not
The
my problem.
attitude is it's not my problem. And let's hope that these incidents are wake up calls because, like you rightly said, Doctor, I mean, we just want to believe that this is happening to somebody else. This can never happen to us. This can never happen to our loved ones. This can never happen to our friends. It can never happen to someone we know. It's always happening to somebody else who you read about in a newspaper. But, Dr. Raheja, I want to ask you a different question. One academic question I have for you. If you could just very briefly explain to our viewers what is the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath. When you see such cases, how would you categorize these men? And while there is no doubt that somebody who's brutally killed another human being belongs to jail, but when we talk about the need for counseling, and sometimes this is extended in jails as well, are these kind of men practically beyond reform? When you talk about a serial killer or somebody who's committed such heinous acts and then shows absolutely no remorse later, I mean, are they practically beyond reform?
So see, the basic distinction being, and that distinction would, to my mind, be theoretical, because an expression, a dastardly expression like this could happen with either. One struggles to make relationships, the other tries to be the other tries to blend into society, would be a charmer, would be living a normal life, would be possibly be the man next door, like we saw in the Nirbhaya case. These were normal men who were either vegetable vendors, or the truck driver, or the bus driver of a school van. So one is somebody who has to make an effort to blend with the society, is atypical, is idiosyncratic, is clumsy, maybe more visible to the people whom he lives with. The other sometime puts up a facade and is able to blend into society, that sometimes even the family is not aware or is perceptive, as we see in some of the Hollywood flicks and some of the movies, where the person has a private dark side which he continues to implement and cause a serial crime, or a serial deviant act. What's very, very important is that whether these people are repairable. I mean, it's too demonizing or dehumanizing to say whether they are repairable. An individual always has room to be reformed, to get better. I don't think repair is the right word, but as a society, do we stand today with resources enough to talk about rehabilitation of men at large in society, whom we might even have difficulty to identify, where the whole mammoth population of mental illness, which needs attention, sometimes goes deprived and unnoticed? But, the responsibility of identifying. So if we say, is policing enough to stop a crime like that? The answer is no. I mean,
Yes.
one, guy will, one Sahil will just get up and start bludgeoning somebody to death. But it is the responsibility of the family. It is the responsibility of the people whom we live with. It is also the society, the immediate close society, which would, when you dig back, you will find at place of work, in schools, in colleges, at places where they are employed, what they do, there are definitely moments where the guards go down and the demonish, devilish side comes out. So it will then be our responsibility of the immediate close circle to
Yeah.
identify these people and to be able to bring in an intervention
Okay.
at the right time. So such, discussions are implemented, they reach out, they become educative,
I guess
and
we
we
need to
can
talk to
prevent
each other
people.
more. Like you said, in so many cases, people live these dual lives where even the families are not aware. So we just have stopped talking to each other, it seems. We a lot of times don't know what's happening in our own families, what's happening in our backyard, what's happening in our neighborhoods. And really, that is something that needs to change. I'm in no position to say whether these men who've displayed, an absolutely demonic side to them are still capable of reform and rehabilitation. I don't know about that. But one thing that, of course, has to be said is that as a society, we really need to shed our apathy. We need to listen to each other more. We need to talk to each other more. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you for all your perspectives, and thanks to the viewers for watching.